today we are joined by Thomas LeCain, who is our real estate expert for North Fulton County. Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Sure, absolutely. And so as we kick off our Atlanta area, we wanted to know, what is the quirkiest, most unique thing you think about Northern Atlanta and Fulton County?
Well, I mean, I don't know about the northern part, but I would say Atlanta in particular would be maybe the Varsity, which would be, a landmark of Atlanta, and of course burgers and French fries that was started by some ex Georgia State University grads. I guess they decided they were quitting, and they opened up this. They opened this hot dog shack across the street from Georgia State, and it's been a landmark ever since. So, so when you come to Atlanta, you've got to go to the Varsity. It's called the Varsity.
Okay. And does it have like the most amazing hot dogs on the planet, or?
I wouldn't say they're amazing, but I mean, it's a landmark for
it's
sure.
A landmark. Okay, I'll put it on my list of places to go when I come down there.
It is an experience.
Right. Okay, so tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? How long have you been in the area, and where do you live now?
Well, I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida. So I was a surf bum. I think I was aspiring to be a surf bum. I mean, maybe, a lot of beach and maybe a t-shirt shack in my future. I don't know, but I went to University of Florida, and I guess after school, being broke and unemployed, I was looking for my future opportunities, and my cousin happened to be in Alpharetta, Georgia, of all places. And this was 1985, so 35 years ago. And he said, you need to come up here. There's some great opportunities. Of course, he said Atlanta. And in my experience of Atlanta when I was growing up in Florida was a place you drove through to get to somewhere else. But I said, what the heck? I don't have anything to lose at the moment. And I came to Alpharetta, and it stuck. So I've been here 36 years later, and I'm still here. I would say, not long, 6 years after I arrived here, then I got my real estate license, and I started a brokerage, which is a little backwards than most people get into the business, but I had a long-term business partner for the 6 years that I was here, and we decided to open a real estate brokerage when I got my license. So that was 30 years ago now. So
right. And so where do you live now?
So I am in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Alpharetta,
and
okay.
So I moved to Alpharetta. I have been here ever since.
Okay. And so, as we go through this, we like to kind of give shout outs to local small businesses. So is there anyone in particular, whether it be coffee, place to eat, favorite place to go, favorite park?
Oh, by all means. I could get an endless list on this one.
Okay, I'll give you like 3 minutes.
That's fine. No, this morning, I'd certainly like to give a shout out to Leslie Graham of 3-8 Juice. This is a daily routine for me, and it's my elixir of life. So I go get a juice every morning from Leslie, and then typically an afternoon might end up over at Never Enough Time for my friend Michelle, who owns that restaurant here in town, and it's fantastic. They've got the best sandwiches around, right in downtown Alpharetta. And then finally, of course, my neighbor and good friend Steve Beecham of Hometown Mortgage. He actually grew up in the area, and we've worked together for a very, very long time. So love having him as a neighbor and a partner in the real estate business as well.
Is he neighbor office neighbor or neighbor house neighbor?
It's a house neighbor. So downtown Alpharetta, I'll give you a little brief synopsis, but up to around 6 years ago, there was really nothing to speak of downtown Alpharetta. There was a little historic district. It was very small, a few restaurants and a few historic buildings, and just really nothing happening. But through a long-term plan, through our mayor of David Belle Isle and city council, and this really was on plan for a decade or more, that they really wanted to redefine what Alpharetta was going to be, what the downtown district was going to be. It was never a destination before, but it is, I mean, literally within this, you know, this 6 or 7 year period, we now have, I don't know, I want to say 600 or 700 residences in the downtown district. We've got close to 30 restaurants in the downtown district. And then also we had a neighboring development through North American Properties, and they developed 80 acres called Avalon. So now you have downtown Alpharetta and you have Avalon, and they're just a mile apart, and they're all connected by what is referred to as the Alpha Loop. So that's a walking trail that connects all of this together. Oh, wow. And so we've got, you know, live, work, play, all in one group. And, you know, of course, like I said, you know, hundreds of new neighbors through all of this. I mean, my little neighborhood in my house that I've been in 15 years, I had 5 neighbors for 10 of those years. And now I have 105 immediate neighbors.
Oh, geez. Right. It's quite a big neighborhood now. Do you get to have an HOA now that you have such a big neighborhood?
Well, I don't belong to that HOA. They actually, what's interesting is they do include my partner Jim and I in the community because we live in the middle of the community now. So,
you don't have to follow the rules then, right?
I don't. Well, it's you know, this is all high density residential development, and we happen to own 2 of the older 1970s original homes in that community, and so we've got lots of space and privacy and a swimming pool and all this. So obviously I think our neighbors like to have us as friends. So.
Okay. You have a pool, so you're everybody's best friend now. My friend just got a pool, and she said, you know, nobody talked to us, but now all of a sudden they saw the pool being built, and they're like texting me, and they're asking what I'm building, like it's not obvious. And she's like, now everybody wants to be my friend. I'm like, maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to put in a
really
poll.
Helps.
Yeah, meet some new neighbors. That'd be great. Okay, so tell me about the housing market where you are. What is it like right now?
So, you know, of course, metropolitan Atlanta is quite large. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you do have different kind of market aspects to different parts of metropolitan Atlanta, because you know, when we consider metropolitan Atlanta, then that's a population of about 6 million plus people. My marketplace that I really focus on is really North Fulton, which comprises of Alpharetta, Roswell, Johns Creek, Milton, and Alpharetta. And those districts are in really super high demand because the schools are very good. Quality of life is very, very good up here. And then, of course, in downtown Alpharetta in particular, it's a walkable community. So when you combine, you know, all of those great aspects of a nice and beautiful and developed community, but to add in the walkability to it, there is a serious amount of demand for that. Right. And of course, only so much inventory that's available. So that creates, you know, that supply and demand aspect. And so it's very vibrant when things go on market in our little district and if I include Avalon or downtown Alpharetta, then I would say there's probably 1,000 homes total. And so if something goes on market, then it stays on market all of about 2 or 3 days. That's crazy. And of course the values are, you know, climbing, and, you know, again, it's all about desirability. It's all about that location.
Right. Absolutely. And so, you know, do you tend to do more of one or the other listing? Do you represent buyers more, or is there a certain type of property? Is it, you know, new construction, historic homes, or is it a little bit?
Well, so I have, so my team of Alpharetta Zen expert home advisors is comprised of myself and my partner, Jim Pixley. And then we've got a new support agent. He's kind of trying to figure out if he wants to be in the field or if he wants to be more inside sales agent. Right now he's acting as inside sales, but Jim Pixley is primarily our lead buyer's agent, and I primarily focus on our sellers. Mm-hmm. And certainly both have they both have their skill set, if you will. And I find for my sellers or our buyers, it's important that they know that we're not dividing our time, because obviously if you're working with sellers and you're working with buyers as well, Well, when you're out in the field with buyers, it's pretty difficult to be that support service for your sellers. And it's not just about getting an offer. It's about managing that transaction all the way through. And you might have a 30 or a 40 or a 60-day period that, you know, you're getting through due diligence and inspection periods and financing contingencies, appraisal contingencies, all of the above. And of course, maybe even helping them like do some certain repairs or trying to figure out where they're going to land on the other side. And of course, having my, you know, Jim as my lead buyer's agent, it allows him to then focus on what their transition is on the other side. So I'm not distracted, you know, representing my sellers, you know, and they know that they have an absolute dedicated full-time support service for finding their next home.
Right. No, that makes total sense. And
Yeah.
I always feel bad for buyer's agents right now, because I feel like it's just like when the house comes on, like, you got to go, like, go now, go look at it.
Now,
It's
2 seconds.
Just, yeah.
I mean,
like,
that's our mantra. As soon as it goes on market, then we better get in that car and go see it now.
right. So I'm sure he's plugging away probably 24/7 right now, trying
It's pretty
to find
busy.
some
We
homes.
both are. I mean, we're, you know, it's really been quite interesting, I think, for the last 4 years for us, because you know, when you're in, I'd say most agents, when they present themselves as being agents in Atlanta, then they're willing to work anywhere and everywhere in Atlanta. So they may be over in Woodstock one day, and they may be over in, you know, Marietta the next day, or they may be in Swanee the next day. And this could be for listings or buyers alike. But I find that because we are, you know, really focused into our location, then it allow us to really, again, support our clients, you know, to the highest and best level for that. And of course, it doesn't mean, you know, when something comes on market, it's not very far away either. So.
Right. And I think that makes sense. And that's part of, you know, why we had picked you, and how we go through finding people is to see, like, where do you actually help sellers and buyers? You know, like, if it's a position for south of Atlanta, like, why would we have you sit on there if your expertise and your knowledge is about the neighborhoods in the area of, you know, Northern Fulton County? So, you know, understanding, like, when you do find an agent, like, make sure they understand the neighborhood you're looking to buy in, because that's really going to be key. Like, you can't explain to someone about a neighborhood if you have never been there. And it sounds like you have this whole area pretty much. You've been there
Well,
how many years now?
well, we did, and I've been here, like I said, 35 years,
Right.
almost 30 years in real estate sales. And obviously it's changed a whole lot in all those years, but we just really focused in on it, and we got busier, you know. So you would think it's counterintuitive, you know. I mean, hey, I need to make sure that I'm focusing on the entire market, and when we said, okay, we are going to dedicate ourselves to this community, this area, this location, and this is about again 4 or 5 years ago that we really just, you know, just specifically focused in on this area, and our business, it more than doubled. I mean, we usually close in excess of around 30 million a year, roughly 45 to 60 transactions a year, and, you know, obviously that keeps 2 agents pretty busy.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and it's interesting. I don't know if you follow Lindy Chapman. She does a lot of consumer advocacy in real estate. And she said, you know, it's really important when you find an agent to work with, that even after you close, they're still there to help you, even down to, like, good places to go to eat, or where can I go get my laundry done? Like, where do you recommend that I go for here? And having someone that lives in that community and really works through there, I think is just an important piece, you know, following after you close, having that resource to help you. Because sometimes people are moving there who have never been there before. You know, sometimes it's sight unseen, and you feel like a fish out of water. So it's finding an expert in that neighborhood can make all the difference in your transition. So I think that's important. So speaking of not having a lot of homes to choose from right now, what are tips you have for buyers that are trying to compete in this ridiculous market?
Well, let's kind of just come back to the sense of urgency that goes along with availability, product availability. So when something does come on market, then our recommendation to our buyers is that is again to make yourselves available. And when we kind of reach out to you and we say, hey, you need to go look at this house, then I would certainly encourage, the higher expectation would be that we need to go see this house now.
Yeah. Hang up the phone
not
and
tomorrow,
get in my car.
not Saturday, but literally minutes from now. And because certainly we refer to as the good stuff as shiny pennies. So if something is really fresh and it's sharp and it's clean and it's priced right, and obviously it's in the right location, then it's going to go very fast. So we make ourselves, kind of on, agent on call, if you will. And that goes for Jim and I both, because obviously, because of the sense of urgency for our buyers in this marketplace, then we're going to make sure that we get them in there quickly. And then finally, when it comes down to kind of transaction management and writing the contract and putting the offer together, then this is where Jim gets involved. But as far as, literally making sure that we're over there, it could be Jim or Taylor or me, or even I've got a couple of, backup support staff and licensed agents that can show that property as well,
Mm-hmm.
But it's just super urgent. That's what I say. Got to do it now.
Right. And so we like to ask this question too. So without you saying, ask your friends and family, what is one way you feel is a good way to find a good agent?
So, I think, I wouldn't even say friends and family, but ask somebody that you don't even know. I mean, it's like, who did you, if you, certainly if you're, if you moved into the community or you live in the community, and you might hear that word real estate from somebody, and it could be somebody in a restaurant and it could be somebody in the grocery store, but it's like, hey, I'm kind of kicking the tires and I'm thinking about, interviewing agents right now. And I heard the word, who did you use and did you like them? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's really important that people are, I would say, honest about their assessments of agents, because they may be friendly to that person and they may have used that person because they really like them, but doesn't necessarily mean they get the best of the best service. And I think it is important to have that conversation, because this is the single largest transaction that people make in their entire lives. And nowadays, with real estate prices climbing, and it's becoming really, again, quite expensive as far as owning, purchasing, selling, and the cost of doing that business is very expensive. Then I feel that you really want the best of the best, and it comes down to all aspects of this business, because it's not only a good marketer, it's not only somebody who knows the marketplace, it's somebody that is a great negotiator, it's somebody that really understands all the dynamics of that transaction. I find that's so interesting to me, because obviously every time I do a transaction, they're all different, and it's kind of like a card game. You really have to understand what your play is, and what our moves are going to be in order to best support my client's goals, whether they're purchasing or selling. Because every client has very, very different needs and goals, and every transaction is going to be extremely different. As much as we seem to think that it's going to be the same, it never is.
Right. And,
right.
I think it's important too, we talk about years of experience, and when you're negotiating and when you're going through these processes, especially when things don't work out how you thought they would, having an agent that has a ton of experience can make all the difference when you're navigating that versus someone that's very new to the process who doesn't really know and might have to go check with who's ever sponsoring them and teaching them and then come back to you. And it's like to have someone that already knows what to do, already knows what you probably should do, and here's what you should expect to guide you, I think is really important. And a lot of the best agent platforms kind of overlook that. And you don't normally find the agents with years and years and years of experience on those platforms. So we're happy to have you, because I feel like the more that we can
Well, thank you.
highlight, yeah, the more that we can highlight people that are good at their job and do good things and are in their community and have those years of experience, it's the better for the people that are on our platform,
Thank
to
you.
guide them to the right way.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
and not to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I find so for the first decade of my career, I was really broker, trainer, recruiter, all of those aspects of the real estate business. So I was really, the first decade was corporate, and I sold my company to a rather large firm back in the late '90s, and they asked me to come to their company and take over their education department. So this was a 600 agent firm. So it was rather large, and I had around 50 agents that we did a walk over to that company. But as taking over as education for this corporation, I helped them grow this company to 1,200 agents in roughly 18 to 20 months. And so really education is really important in my background. And so I find that for me, every time I'm working with a seller or a buyer, that I like to kind of step into that education role. I think it's really important that my sellers understand exactly what's going on kind of behind the scenes as well. Because, I think a lot of times that, what we're guilty of as far as agents and realtors is that we really don't kind of again kind of reveal what's behind the scenes, to open up the curtain to say this is really what's going on, and this is what we do, and this is why you're looking for a really extraordinary experienced agent. And so I like to kind of pull the curtain back and educate my sellers and my buyers to that process, because it does really open their eyes to what we really do. It's not a matter of just, hey, we stick a sign out in the yard and it all looks really great and we get the job done and it's all done. And I think so much of our consumer perception is how easy this business is from both the buying and the selling side.
Right.
So
right. There's
so
a lot
I take
that goes
that
on.
educational
Yeah.
aspect to home.
Right.
And they really truly appreciate it, because
right.
these, even savvy sellers or savvy buyers, when they actually get a deeper understanding about what really happens behind the scenes.
Right. It's interesting. I follow a lot of real estate community forums. Like I follow one for agents and one for just general population and homeowners and home sellers. And so many times they say, well, this came through, but my agent hasn't told me what to do yet. What do you think? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like don't ask people you don't know for advice. Like your agent should be explaining this to you. And so sometimes maybe, agents get used to the process and it's just become like routine, but it's not when you're buying a home for your first time. It's always going to be that first time for your client that's never bought a home before. And it's explaining that every single time is so important, because if you don't, then they're going to go online and they're going to be asking strangers, and they're probably not going to get the best advice, the right advice, the biased advice. And so having someone that's incredibly educated and explains that to you, I think is very good, which is a green flag when you're interviewing an agent. But what would be a red flag when you're interviewing an agent that is probably a good sign that they might not be a good fit for you, or they might not know what they're doing, or there's quite a few agents to choose from. And so when you're interviewing them, what would you say? Like, you should probably consider someone else.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because I guess I always like to kind of go back to, because this is really a financial transaction from purchasing and selling. So I think it might be important to, rather than, asking super personal questions about maybe somebody's, financial or credit worthiness, because I think, one's actions translate into, that financial support to your sellers or your buyers. And I think it's important that, that you might, ask some questions about, what their background and what their history might have been, so that you might get a better feel about what, how they make decisions from a financial perspective for themselves. which gives you a better understanding about maybe how they might be advising you for your financial transaction.
Right.
And I know it's kind of a sticky wicket. I kind of, from the back end scene, I talk to my team members and I just say, it's almost like, if we could, dispel the myth of and say, run a credit score on your realtor, I mean, that's going to give you a pretty good understanding about really how well they manage their own financial aspects in their own lives.
Right.
And but I think, again, just having some questions and some open dialogue about, some decisions about what your agent has done in the past will give you a pretty good understanding about what kind of advice you might get, as a seller or a buyer.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I can't imagine being able to pull someone else's credit score. That would be really interesting. The closest I have is Steve's peer reputation to see at least what other agents say about each other, but that's as close as I can get.
You just kind of find it's interesting, from the process, but, and I know it might sound, again, a little, you might be taking some kind of perspective and saying, okay, well, take a look at their car, or take a look at that, how they present themselves. But it's an entire package about, again, what kind of history does this agent have? And, and it doesn't have to be just real estate, I mean, they may be brand new to the business, but if they had, some financial acumen and some corporate background and, a good kind of history for themselves about building their own personal security and wealth and I guess personal financial goals, those are translators into this business. Right. Because once again, this is the single largest transaction that somebody's making, and if this person can't even manage their own lives, then they certainly shouldn't be, making judgments or advising you on your own personal transactions.
Absolutely. Well. And it's funny you mentioned that. I think it's so key to remember too, when you're looking at how an agent markets themselves, expensive cars, flashy things does not mean that agent is necessarily successful, right? So watching what you see online doesn't necessarily translate to how that person actually lives. So ask those questions and don't judge it based on things, I guess is the best way to put it, because we can all make ourselves look successful online, but in actuality, in real life, navigate this process to make sure this person actually is buttoned up and financially savvy to help.
By all means.
Right.
Yeah. And you see it happen all the time for sure. I mean, they may look flashy and all this stuff, but they're kind of a financial mess. And they're, I refer to that as having commission breath. Okay. Because they absolutely need this transaction in order to keep, their own their transaction or financial mess of a life on track.
Right.
And so I've always focused on this business from the client is first, the rest will follow. I never worry about, how much I'm getting paid or, what the commission is involved. That has nothing to do with the transaction itself. And having, that client first approach, then you're willing to, to advise them. And sometimes it's not going to be beneficial to your pocket in the credit advice and the financial advice and the real estate advice that you're giving those clients. So I feel like that's where you really have to, focus on for your clients in the long term, because that's going to build your business for forever. I mean, I guess that's why I've been doing this for 30 years. It's something I want to do for the rest of my life, or until I decide that I'll retire, but I'm not sure if I'll actually, I just love this business. That's what it's about. And, so I'm not sure if retirement will ever be in that aspect. I mean, I'm sure I'll always be in some form or factor doing real estate of some sort.
Are you going to end up being like the oldest realtor ever on the planet that's still selling homes at some point? Not now, obviously, but in like
I just
many
don't know.
years down the road.
It's I mean, I kind of joke about it. It's like, maybe my last breath, I'll be putting that sign in the yard, but,
Wait,
but
signing off the
I
contract.
don't, it may be certainly in a different, aspect, consulting, support services for, I guess other agents that I've grown over the years, and that, we've got a property management company that we run as well. And, it's kind of self-sufficient. I've got other agents that run that company, and, so maybe acting more as board of director, CEO,
Mhm.
something of that aspect, as opposed to the daily transactional support,
Right.
But I
Yeah.
always want to be here for my clients and my friends and my family that I've worked with for all these years. It's been extraordinary how many people how many people I've touched, and how they've really influenced and changed my life as well for the better.
Right.
I've got some great friends.
And I think what you say speaks volumes. You put the consumer first, not your personal aspirations first. And I think that shows over the years of where you are now. Like putting always the consumer first and making the best choices for them only leads you to a better business, a better, I don't want to say wealth, but at least doing the right thing always ends up leading you towards greater things, right? And
It
having that
surely
in mind.
does. Well, we kind of had a little back end credo. We just said, do the right thing even if it hurts, and
Right. Right.
and that's what's just it's so important. And when my teammates come to me and they say, hey, what do you recommend? What's it, and I say, and my first question out of my mouth is, what do you think is the right thing to do? And and that's the guiding principle for our team and how we approach.